Okay, now here's what you do with the GCF. These are the exact same problems as what you just saw. This is all notes too. Here's what you do with the GCF. You know, you do the rainbows. You take outside here and you're doing the opposite. You're going backwards, okay? You're undoing the rainbows, okay? That's what you do with the GCF. So what you do is make sure you got x second and x to the first, and then your GCF is x to the first, and then 6, 12, and 6 is 6. So I've already established the GCF. You find it the same way you just did on that other packet, okay? The smallest power, and then 12 and 6 on the computer 6. Now here's what you do with the GCF. You have this box, you make a parentheses with a space outside, and you put the GCF 6x to the first into the space. Now, you go up and underline each term, and you're going to divide by 6x to the first. Okay? Now, this can be a little bit confusing. When you have x to the same power, like I do x to the first, these aren't the same power. That's a second, that's a first. But if the x's are the same power, you can scribble them off, okay, and not worry about them. They have to be to the same power, though. So what I do is I take 12, and here I'll even get a calculator for it. I mean, it's pretty easy division, but I'll show you. So I take 12 divided by 6, and that's 2. So I put a 2 here, and then I write x down. And then I take the 2 from the top and minus the 1 on the bottom, and that's 1, okay? So 2x to the 1. And then, if you have a minus, make it plus negative, if it's a minus, okay? And then you take negative 6 divided by 6, and that's negative 1. Now, you can write plus negative 1. Okay, but if you get a negative, you just write minus 1. Okay. Now another thing, if your x is to the first power, if it's to the first power, you can scribble it off and x won't have a power. Okay, that's how we want to do it. And the same out here. Okay, so 6x times 2x minus 1. It's a little bit confusing. Okay, my next problem. 4x is the GCF, so it'd be 4x to the first, and x to the fifth, and x to the first. So what do I do with the GCF? 4x to the first, I put it out here. Okay, then I go up and divide by the 4x to the first. Now somewhere on one of the two divisions, the x is to the same power. It wouldn't be there, it's right here, so we can get rid of those since they're the same power. So I take 12 divided by 4, and that's 3. And then for x, you take 5 minus 1, because you're dividing, so that's to the fourth power. We will not be scribbling that power out because it is not a 1 power, it's a 4. And then plus, we already have the plus, and then I divide 8 by 4, and that's 2. Now the x here is to the fourth, so we have to leave the fourth there. This x is to the first, scribble out the 1, just kind of like that. Okay, so we got 4x times 3x to the fourth power plus 2. Okay, now x to the third, x to the first, and then the GCF's x to the first with 5. 15 and 20 on that little computer is 5. So what do you do with that? You bring out 5x to the first. Okay, so then you go divide by 5x to the first. Now somewhere, x to the third, x to the first, those aren't the same. X to the first, x to the first, those are the same. Those can just be scribbled out. Okay, so I actually divide 15 by 5, and that's 3. Then on the x variable, we take 3 minus 1. Okay, 3 minus 1 is 2. Just put a 2 there. Okay, I'm going to quit writing the minus out. You should know that you minus those 2. Plus, and then 20 divided by 5 is 4. Okay, now that x is to the second, so we have to keep the second. This first we get rid of. Okay, so 5x times 3x to the second power plus 4. Okay, my next one, we got x to the second, x to the first, so x to the first over here. Then 64 and 16 on that GCF calculator, 16. So what do I do with the 16x to the first of this GCF? We bring it out here. Okay. Then we go divide each of these by 16x to the first. Okay, now those powers are different, but these are the same, so these can be crossed out. So I take 64 divided by 16 and I get 4. Then on the x, I take 2 minus 1, and that's 1. So that's x to the 1. Now with a minus, I'd make it plus negative, and I'd divide negative 16 by positive 16. I get negative 1. So if you get negative 1, you switch it back to minus, and you just put 1. Because plus negative 1 is the same as minus 1. Okay? So that x is to the first power, so we don't need an exponent there. That x is the first power. We don't need an exponent there. Okay, so 16x times 4x minus 1. Okay, next problem. I screwed this up. The GCF is 1x, not 3x. That's my fault. That's on me. X to the fourth, x to the 1, so x to the 1 would be your GCF, and then 3 and 16, the GCF's 1. So what do we do with that 1x to the 1? We bring it out here, outside of a parentheses I made, and I divide by 1x to the 1, 1x to the 1. So these powers are different. We can't cross those off. These are the same. We can cross those off. Okay, so I take 3 divided by 1, and that's 3. Then for x, we take 4 minus 1, and that's 3. Plus, and then 16 divided by 1 is 16. Okay, so that's x to the third. We got to keep that. That's x to the first. We can get rid of that because it's after you're here, you don't want to see first powers anymore. Okay, you just want to see x if it's a first power. Okay, my next problem. I had x to the second and x to the 1. So x to the 1's the GCF. And then 5 and 5, again, that is 5 if they're the same number. Okay, so what do I do with that? I bring it out here. 5x to the 1. Then I go divide by what's here, the 5x to the 1. Okay. You put that out here, and then you go up and divide these by it. So 2 and 1 are different. 1 and 1 are the same, so we can cross those out. And then I take 5 divided by 5. That's 1. Then there's an x, and then on the x, we take 2 minus 1, and that's 1. 1x to the first. Plus negative, okay? So I take negative 5 divided by 5. I got negative 1. So don't write plus negative 1. You write minus positive 1 if it's negative. Okay? And then those first powers can go away. Okay, so we have 5x times 1x minus 1. Okay, now for my next problem. 10x to the second and 10x to the first, and the GCF's 10x, which would mean 10x to the first. So 10x to the first goes out here, and then we go up and divide by the 10x to the first. Okay, that's a second and a first. Those stay the same, but the 1 and the 1 mean the x's there can go bye-bye. Okay, so divide 10 divided by 10. That's 1. Then on the x, we take 2 minus 1. That's 1. So 1x to the 1. And then that's a plus, so it's plus. And then 10 divided by 10 is 1 again. Okay, now the first powers can cancel. Okay, and that's what we have, 10x times 1x plus 1. Okay, GCF here. Okay, we got 20x to the second and 20x to the first, so the GCF would be x to the first. And then 20 and 20, okay, is 20. They're the same number, don't use a computer, you just have 20. So this 20x to the first goes here, and then I need to underline both my terms and divide by 20x to the 1. So 2 and 1, those would not cross out. 1 and 1, those would. Okay, so first I take 20 divided by 20, and that's 1. And on x, we take the exponents and subtract them on a division. Okay, it's 1. 1x to the 1. Plus 20 divided by 20 is 1. Okay, so the x to the 1's go bye-bye. And that's the answer, 20x times 1x plus 1. It's like the opposite of the rainbows, because I do the rainbows like this, but I want to do the opposite, okay? If I did the rainbows, it would equal back to this. I don't want to do that. Okay, now for my next problem. Now this time we have a negative, because I had a negative in front, x second and x1, so it'd be x to the 1. And on the computer, 4 and 20 gives me 4. So it's negative 4x to the first. So I reverse distribute negative 4x to the first, and then I got to go up here and divide by the negative 4x to the first. Okay, the 1 and the 1 mean the x's canceled, but they don't on the 2 and the 1. They're still there. So I take negative 4 divided by negative 4, and that's 1. Okay. Then on x, I minus the exponents, 2 minus 1, and that's 1. So 1x to the 1. Okay, then I take positive 20 divided by negative 4. You got a negative. So instead of plus negative 5, you need to write minus 5. Not minus negative 5, just minus 5. Trust me, okay? If that second one comes out negative, you write minus and then just the number. And then, of course, if their x's are to the first power, I would like them not to be there. Okay, my next problem. Again, the front number was negative, so we put negative. And then 6 and 21, the GCFs. Okay, and then they both have x second and x first, so that's why the x would be to the first. And then 6 and 21 on that computer, the GCF's 3. So I take negative 3x to the first and bring it out here. Okay, now we need to divide by negative 3x to the first. Negative 3x to the first. And the second and the first stay the same. The first and the first cancel. Okay, so I divide negative 6 by negative 3 and I get 2. So that's 2. Then for x, I take 2 minus 1. And that's 1. Okay, now in the second one, we take positive 21 divided by negative 3, and I got negative 7, so I don't write plus 7, I just write minus 7. And those first powers, get rid of them. Okay, next problem, we have a negative in front, sure. And and then x second, x first, so that's why we see the x to the first as my GCF. On the computer, 3 and 6, the GCF's 3. Greatest common factor. Greatest common factor means the largest value you can divide these numbers by and not get a decimal. You don't want any decimals. Okay, so negative 3x to the first. Just take that over here, and then underline both. And I divide negative 3x to the first, negative 3x to the first. So the first thing, by the way, second and first are different. First and first are the same, so we get rid of the first. So I divide negative 3 by negative 3, I get 1. A big 1. Then x, because I didn't cross out the x's, so it's still going to be there. I take 2 minus 1, and that's 1. So 1x to the 1. Now, this has a minus, so again, we have to divide negative 6 by negative 3. Okay, that's 2. It's positive 2, so we write plus 2. Then the first powers go bye-bye. Okay, next problem. GCF. Negative in front, so that's why it's negative. Okay, because the very first number is negative. And then I have x to the second and x to the first, so x to the first. And then 20 and 30 on that computer is 10. So I factor out negative 10x to the first. That's what it's called when you put it on the line. You're factoring it out of the expression. Then I divide both of these by the negative 10x to the first. Okay, so the second and first are different. The first and first are the same. Okay, so I take negative 20 divided by negative 10, which is 2. Then on x, I take 2 minus 1, which is 1. So 2x to the 1 power. Okay, then what I do is I take positive 30 divided by negative 10. Now, since I got a negative, I use the subtraction operator, and then I just put 3, not negative 3. It's 3. And those first powers, get them out of there. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that. I hope it's been informative, and we take this one step at a time.